The sun had not yet risen, but Titus was already awake, not because he wanted to be, because in his home, sleep was never a right, it was a luxury borrowed from exhaustion. He pushed himself up from the thin mat on the floor, his body already aching before the day had even begun. Outside, the village was still quiet. Peaceful. Almost like it belonged to someone else's life. Titus moved quietly through the small compound, careful not to wake anyone. Not that it mattered. Even if he made noise, no one would come to check on him. No one ever did. The first task was always the same: fetch water. The path to the river was long, but familiar. The jerrycans were heavy, but his hands had learned their weight before he had even learned his own name properly. Behind him, the house was already stirring, but not for him. He heard laughter inside. His younger brother, warm greetings, his mother's softer voice. A voice Titus rarely heard directed at himself. He paused for a moment at the edge of the compound, glancing back at the house. For a brief second, something unfamiliar rose in his chest, not anger, not sadness, something quieter: recognition. This is how it always is. By the time he returned with the water, the day had already fully taken shape. Orders would come one after another: farm work, cleaning, repairing, carrying, fetching. His name would be spoken only when something needed to be moved: Titus. Not son. Never son. Just Titus, short. Sharp. Useful. By mid-morning, the sun was already harsh. Sweat clung to his skin as he worked in the fields behind the house, bending low, planting, pulling, lifting. His younger brother passed by once, clean clothes, laughing with friends. He didn't even look at Titus, but Titus noticed. He always noticed. At noon, his mother called from the house, "Bring firewood. And be quick." No greeting. No acknowledgement of effort already done, just command. He obeyed, because that was what he had always been taught to do. To obey. To serve. To exist only in usefulness. By evening, his body felt like it no longer belonged to him. His hands were rough, his back stiff, his stomach empty. The rest of the family sat together inside the house, eating. Titus sat outside, not invited or not forgotten, just placed there like part of the yard. From inside, he could hear them talking. His brother's voice rose in excitement. Their father laughed. His mother responded softly. Titus ate what was left in silence, and then came the moment that changed nothing on the surface, but everything inside him. His father stepped outside for a moment. Titus thought maybe, just maybe, he would be called in. Maybe tonight would be different. Maybe tonight he would be seen. But his father didn't look at him for long. Instead, he said something casually, almost as if speaking about the weather. "You are strong. That is good. At least we know you will not disappoint us." Then he turned and went back inside. The door closed. The sound was soft, but inside Titus, something cracked louder than any noise he had ever heard. He didn't move for a long time. The night grew heavier around him. The village quieted. Even the wind seemed to settle, and in that silence, Titus finally understood something he had never allowed himself to think before. He was not waiting to be loved. He was only being used, and somewhere deep inside him, a question he did not yet have the courage to speak began to form. If I stop serving them, do I still exist here at all? The fireflies lit up the darkness around him as he sat outside alone, inside the house. Laughter continued and Titus remained outside. Unnoticed. As always, but for the first time, he was beginning to notice himself. The morning after never felt like a new beginning for Titus. It felt like continuation. As if yesterday had not ended at all, only paused long enough for him to sleep, then resumed without mercy. His body was already sore before he stepped outside. The work had not changed. The expectations had not changed. And neither had the way his name was called: Titus. Sharp. Commanding. Familiar. He didn't respond immediately. He already knew what was coming: water. Now. He moved not because he agreed, but because he had learned long ago that resistance only created more pain, not change. By mid-morning, the sun was harsh again, pressing down on the earth like it wanted everything beneath it to submit. Titus worked through it silently, his hands moving out of habit more than thought, but something was different today, and not outside, inside him. A dull emptiness that had always been there now felt clearer. Like fog lifting. Like something had finally stopped pretending. He noticed things he used to ignore: his brother laughing too loudly while doing nothing, his father speaking about discipline while avoiding any real work, his mother distributing kindness like it had conditions attached to it, and for the first time, Titus did not just feel tired. He felt aware. By late afternoon, he was sent to deliver firewood to an old woman at the edge of the village. She lived alone. People said she was strange. People also said she used to be someone important before life pushed her into silence. Titus didn't care about the stories. He only cared that this task meant a few minutes away from the house. The woman's compound was small but calm. No shouting. No orders. No tension hanging in the air like smoke, just stillness. When she opened the door, she didn't look surprised to see him. "You are late," she said gently. Titus blinked. "I was told to come." She studied him for a moment, then stepped aside. "Bring it in." Inside her house, something unfamiliar happened. It was warm, not from fire, from presence. A small pot simmered on a clay stove. The scent filled the room slowly, simple, but deep. Titus didn't know why, but his steps slowed as he entered. The old woman noticed. "You are hungry," she said. It wasn't a question. Titus hesitated. No one asked him things like that. They usually told him what he was. "I'm fine," he replied automatically. She nodded once, as if she didn't believe him, but also didn't need him to admit it. Then she moved the pot aside and placed a small bowl in front of him. "Eat." It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was just one word, but it landed on Titus differently than any command he had ever heard. Not like an order, like permission. He stared at the food. Simple meal, nothing special, yet something inside him tightened, because no one had ever given him food without expecting something in return. "Why?" he asked quietly. The woman sat across from him. "Because you look like someone who has forgotten what it means to be treated like a person." That sentence hit deeper than anything he had experienced before. Titus lowered his eyes for a moment. He didn't move. Then slowly, cautiously, he ate. The first bite was ordinary. The second felt different. By the third, something strange began happening inside him. Not satisfaction, awareness, the texture, the balance, the simplicity. It spoke in a language he didn't know he understood. His hand paused mid-bite. The woman watched him carefully. "You feel it," she said softly. Titus looked up. "Feel what?" She leaned back slightly. "Not everyone is born just to survive." The words lingered, heavy, uncomfortable. "True." After he finished eating, he set the bowl down carefully, as if it now mattered more than it should. "I should go back," he said, but he didn't stand immediately, and neither did she speak. A silence stretched between them. Then she said something that stayed with him longer than anything else that day. "You don't belong where you are being buried." Titus frowned slightly. "I'm not buried." She looked at him, not harshly, not kindly, just truthfully. "You are just still breathing under it." Something in his chest tightened. He didn't respond, because for the first time in his life, he didn't know how. Outside, the world was still the same village, the same responsibilities waiting for him, the same life that called him only when it needed him. But as Titus stood up to leave, something unfamiliar followed him out of that house. Not hope, not escape, something more dangerous, awareness, and deep inside him, unnoticed by anyone else, a small crack that had formed the day before began to widen. Not enough to break him yet, but enough to let something in, something that would never leave him the same. Titus returned home as the sun began to fall. The sky was painted in soft orange and fading gold, as if the world itself was trying to look beautiful before darkness arrived. But beauty never changed anything in his home. The moment he stepped through the gate, the atmosphere shifted, not in greeting, but in expectation. No one said welcome back. No one asked where he had been. They never did. His presence was only acknowledged when it was required. Inside the compound, his younger brother was seated comfortably under the shade, laughing with a friend. Clean clothes. Relaxed posture. Hands untouched by labor. Titus passed by quietly. His brother glanced at him briefly. A smile flickered, mocking, effortless. "You're back early today," he said casually. Titus didn't respond, not because he had nothing to say, but because he had learned that speaking rarely changed anything. His brother chuckled and turned away as if Titus had already become uninteresting. That was how it always ended. People stopped seeing him once they confirmed he would not challenge them. Inside the house, his mother was preparing supper. The smell of food filled the small space, but it didn't reach Titus the way it should have. Not anymore. He stood at the doorway waiting, not for permission, for acknowledgement. His mother didn't look up immediately. She stirred the pot slowly, as if his presence was part of the furniture. "Did you finish the firewood delivery?" she asked. "Yes." "Did you pass by the market?" No, a pause, then she nodded once. Good. Tomorrow you will go early. There is more work. That was it.no, thank you. No, are you tired? No, sit and eat with us. Just continuation of obligation. Titus moved to sit outside. He was used to it. The outside was where he belonged in their structure of life, not inside conversations, not inside decisions, just outside. As evening settled, the family gathered inside for dinner. Laughter began again, light, careless, effortless. Titus could hear it clearly from where he sat, a sound he was never part of. He looked down at his hands, rough, tired, always moving, never still enough to belong anywhere else. His younger sister passed him once on her way inside. She hesitated briefly, glanced at him, then continued walking without a word. That silence hurt more than insult would have, because even acknowledgement had slowly been removed from his life. He was no longer being pushed away. He was being ignored into disappearance. Inside, their father spoke loudly. Responsibility is important. A man must understand duty. Titus almost laughed, because no one understood duty more than him, yet no one called it by his name. He stayed outside long after dinner ended. The night deepened, crickets filled the silence, and still, he didn't move, not because he had nowhere to go, but because nowhere inside felt like his anymore. At some point, his father stepped outside. Titus straightened slightly, maybe this time, but his father didn't look at him. Instead, he stopped near the doorway and said casually, without turnings, tomorrow. Your brother will accompany me to town. He needs to learn how to handle business matters. Titus froze. For a second, he thought he misheard. His brother, business matters, and him, years of labor. Years of carrying weight. Years of obedience. None of it was preparation for anything that mattered. He remained silent. His father continued, You, Titus, are strong. You can manage the heavier work here. Then he walked back inside. The door closed again, soft, final. Inside Titus, something shifted, not loudly, not violently, quietly, like something accepting it had never been chosen. He stayed still long after the footsteps faded. Inside the house, laughter returned. Inside Titus, something did not. For the first time, he noticed it clearly, not just what he was doing, but what he was becoming in their world. A person who exists only to hold what others refuse to carry. And as the night grew deeper, a thought he had never allowed before pressed gently against his mind. If I stopped working tomorrow, would I still matter here at all? He didn't answer it, because he already feared the answer. And in that silence, deeper than any night around him, Titus began to understand something dangerous. He was not invisible by accident. He was invisible by design. The first time Titus met Lena, it was not planned. It never was in stories like his. It happened on a day like any other, when life did not announce that it was about to change, but simply did it anyway. He was returning from the river, jerrycans cutting into his hands, dust clinging to his feet. The sun was already harsh, and his mind was elsewhere, half on tomorrow's work, half on the quiet exhaustion that had become his normal. That was when he heard laughter, and not the mocking kind he was used to. This was lighter, unburdened. He slowed without meaning to. Near the roadside, a group of village girls stood chatting. One of them turned slightly, and for a brief moment, her eyes met his. Alina. She wasn't the kind of beauty that demanded attention. She was the kind that held it quietly. Soft eyes. Calm presence. A smile that looked like it hadn't been shaped by struggle yet. Titus looked away immediately, and not because he was uninterested, but because interest was dangerous in a life like his. Hey, one of the girls called out suddenly. You're Titus, right? He paused, hearing his name spoken by someone who wasn't commanding him always felt strange. Yes, he replied cautiously. Alina stepped slightly forward. You always carry water alone. Titus didn't answer at first, because no one ever asked why he did anything. They only expected it. Yes, he said finally. A short silence followed. Then Lena smiled, not mocking, not pitying. Just observing. That must be tiring. The words landed softly, too softly. Titus tightened his grip on the cans. It's fine. But she didn't move away immediately. Instead, she looked at him like she was seeing something beyond the dust, beyond the labor, beyond the silence he wore like skin. That's what everyone says when they're used to being tired, she said quietly. Something in Titus shifted, but he didn't show it. He never did. I should go, he said, already stepping back into the path. But Lena's voice followed him gently. You don't talk much, do you? Titus hesitated, then answered honestly. For once, no one listens when I do. For a moment, something flickered in her expression, not pity, understanding, and that was worse because understanding meant she had seen something real, something he could not hide. From that day, Lena began appearing more often, not always to him directly, sometimes just nearby, sometimes just present. She would greet him when others didn't bother. She would ask small questions that didn't feel like interrogation. She would notice things no one else noticed, like when his hands were injured, or when he was unusually quiet even for himself. At first, Titus resisted it. He told himself it was nothing, just curiosity, just coincidence, just noise in a life that didn't need more complications. But silence has a weakness. It begins to respond to anything that feels like warmth. One afternoon, Lena found him sitting alone near the edge of the fields. He was repairing a broken tool, fingers rough and patient. She sat beside him without asking. For a while, neither of them spoke. Then she said softly, "Do you ever think about leaving?" Titus didn't look up. "Leaving where?" "This place." He paused. The question was too big for someone like him, because people like him didn't leave places, they stayed until they were no longer noticed. "No," he said finally. Lena tilted her head slightly. "Why?" Titus tightened a screw in the tool. "Slower now, because there's nothing waiting for me anywhere else." Lena didn't respond immediately, and when she did, her voice was quieter than before. "That's not true." Titus finally looked at her, really looked, and for a second, just a second, something unfamiliar crossed his mind. Not hope, not belief, something more dangerous, possibility. But possibilities in his life never stayed soft for long, because even as Lena smiled at him again, something unseen was already beginning to form in the distance. A shift, a comparison, a replacement waiting to happen. Titus didn't know it yet. But love in his world would not arrive as comfort. It would arrive as a test, and he was about to fail it in ways he could not yet imagine. That evening, as he returned home, he noticed something small. His younger brother was already inside the compound, laughing with Lena. Titus stopped walking, just for a moment, long enough for something inside him to register the shape of what he was seeing. Then he continued walking. As if nothing had changed, but inside him, something had already started to move quietly. Uninvited and irreversible. The day Titus went to the city was not meant to change his life. It was meant to serve it. Like everything else, he had been sent to deliver farm produce, bags of vegetables, crates of supplies, loaded onto an old truck that rattled with every turn. No one told him it was special. No one warned him it would matter. To his family, it was just another errand. To Titus, it was just another day of carrying weight that did not belong to him. The journey was long. Dust rose behind them like a fading memory of the village. As the road stretched forward, something unfamiliar began to build inside him. Not excitement, curiosity, the kind he had never been allowed to nurture. When they finally entered the city, everything felt louder, busier, faster. Buildings rose into the sky like they were trying to escape the ground itself. People moved with purpose. Titus wasn't used to seeing, like they belonged to where they were going. He didn't, not here and not anywhere. The truck stopped at a luxury hotel. Titus stepped down slowly, carrying crates through polished glass doors that reflected a version of him he barely recognized. Clean floors, soft lighting, quiet authority in every corner. This was not a place for people like him, but no one said that out loud. Inside, chaos was building in a way Titus didn't understand yet. Staff moved quickly. Voices overlapped. Orders were being shouted from one end of the kitchen corridor to another. Something was wrong. A delivery delay. A VIP event preparing upstairs. Pressure everywhere. Titus was instructed to drop the goods at the back and leave immediately. That was the plan. That was always the plan. But plans break easily in moments of disorder. As he walked past the kitchen entrance, he stopped, not because he was told to, but because he heard something. Noise, but organized noise. Pots clanging, knives striking. Rhythmically, orders being called out in sharp precision. It wasn't chaos. It was control. Inside the kitchen, chefs moved like a living system. Every action had purpose. Every movement had direction. Titus didn't realize he was staring until someone spoke behind him. "You're blocking the entrance." He turned quickly. A senior staff member stood there, annoyed. "I'm just passing," Titus said. "Then pass." But Titus didn't move immediately because something inside him had locked onto the kitchen, the smell, the movement, the energy. It felt different, like something mattered here in a way it had never mattered in his life. Against his better judgment, he stepped closer, just for a moment. Inside, a dish was being rushed. A mistake had been made, something small, but critical in a high-pressure service. Orders were getting delayed. Voices rose. The tension spiked. Titus didn't know why he noticed it. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was something deeper, but he saw it. Point 1 station was off balance. Point 1 ingredient misused. Point 1 correction missing. Before he could stop himself, he spoke quietly. That sauce will overpower the dish. Silence hit instantly. Several chefs turned to the room, froze for half a second, then one of them frowned. "What did you say?" Titus blinked, realizing too late what he had done. I just meant, who are you?" Another voice cut in. Titus hesitated. "Delivery." The head chef nearby narrowed his eyes, but something else was happening now. The dish that had been rushed came back for correction. A taste test followed. A pause, then another chef slowly frowned, his right. The room shifted, subtle, but undeniable. The sauce had been too heavy, the balance was off, and just like that, a small correction saved a major service issue. Titus stood there, suddenly aware of every eye in the room. He should have left. He should have apologized and disappeared, but he didn't, because for the first time in his life, someone had listened. The head chef finally stepped forward, studying him carefully. He said slowly. "Come here." Titus hesitated. Something inside him warned him to leave, but something stronger kept him rooted. He stepped forward. The chef pointed toward the station. "Taste it." It wasn't a request. It was a test. Titus looked at the dish, then at the people watching him, then, carefully, he picked up a spoon. He tasted, and instantly, something inside him clicked. Not words, not thoughts, understanding. He didn't know why he understood it so clearly, but he did. "This needs acidity," he said quietly. "Not more spice. The balance is already lost." Silence again, but this time, different, interested. The head chef studied him longer now, too long. Then he said something that would echo far beyond that kitchen. "You're not supposed to be here." Titus swallowed. "I know." A pause, then the chef asked, "Do you cook?" Titus hesitated, because the truth was, he had never been allowed to try, but somewhere deep inside him, something answered before he did, "No." The chef nodded slowly, then surprised him. "Good. That means you can still learn properly." Titus blinked. That wasn't what he expected. Not anger, not dismissal, interest. Before he could respond, the chef added, "If you finish your delivery, come back tomorrow." Titus stood frozen, because nothing in his life had ever been offered to him without a condition that hurt. But this didn't feel like a trap. It felt like a door, and for the first time in his life, Titus wondered what would happen if he walked through it. Behind him, the city continued moving, unaware, unbothered, but inside him, something had already shifted, quietly, irreversibly. Like a life that had just discovered it was allowed to become something else. Titus should not have gone back. That was the thought that followed him the entire night after leaving the hotel, not because he was afraid, but because something inside him had already started to change, and change, in his life, always came with pain. He lay awake on his thin mat in the village, listening to the usual sounds of his home, laughter inside, his brother's voice rising, his father speaking about plans that did not include him, and for once, Titus did not feel like he belonged even in the silence outside. The next morning, he woke earlier than usual, not because he was called, but because he was thinking about the kitchen, about the precision, about the way everything had moved like it mattered, and about the words the chef had said, "Come back tomorrow." Titus told himself he wouldn't go. He worked through the morning like normal. Carried water. Cleaned. Obeyed. Endured, but something was different now. He noticed everything more sharply. Every command felt heavier, every insult felt clearer, every moment of being ignored felt louder. By midday, he made a decision he didn't announce. He left, not for work, not for errands, but for the city. The hotel kitchen was louder this time, not chaotic, alive. Titus stood at the back in trance, unsure if he even had permission to be there. He almost turned back twice, but then the head chef saw him and simply said, "You're late." Titus blinked. "I wasn't sure if you're serious or not," the chef interrupted. Titus didn't answer, because that was exactly what he wasn't sure about. The chef nodded once. "Good. Serious people don't arrive confident. They arrive unsure and stay anyway." Then he pointed inside. "Wash your hands." That was it.no ceremony.no introduction, just entry. Titus obeyed, not because he was used to obeying anymore, but because something inside him wanted to. The kitchen was already in motion, orders flying, knives cutting rhythm into silence, heat rising from every station like a second atmosphere. Titus was placed at the edge, simple tasks at first, peeling vegetables, cleaning stations, observing. But even while he worked, he was watching everything. He didn't realize it at first, but he wasn't just looking. He Was understanding, patterns, timing, balance, mistakes. He saw when a dish was rushed before it was ready. He saw when seasoning was added too early. He saw when chefs were reacting instead of controlling, and the more he saw, the more something inside him responded. At one point, a junior chef dropped a tray in panic during a busy service, food everywhere, tension rising, the station freezing. Clean that up fast, someone shouted. But Titus was already moving, not thinking, just reacting. He knelt, reorganized the ingredients quickly, and reset the station flow, not perfectly, but efficiently. Then he spoke quietly, restart from source. Everything else is recoverable. The junior chef froze, others nearby looked over, but something strange happened. They didn't stop him, because the way he said it wasn't like a servant. It was like someone who saw the whole system. The head chef noticed. He didn't interrupt. He just watched. Later, during a high-pressure service, something went wrong again. A critical dish, meant for a VIP table, was delayed. The kitchen tension rose instantly. "This table cannot wait," someone shouted. A panic spread, but Titus didn't panic. He looked at the station, then at the ingredients, then at the flow of orders, and he saw it, not just the dish, the mistake behind the dish. A missing step earlier in preparation had caused the delay. Without being asked, he stepped forward. "I can fix it," he said. Silence hit again. A junior worker stared at him. "You?" Titus didn't respond. He just moved. He adjusted the timing, rebalanced the plate structure, corrected the seasoning, not by guessing, but by instinct. He didn't even know he had. Minutes passed. The dish went out late, but perfect. A waiter returned shortly after. The VIP table had noticed, compliment sent back. The kitchen didn't celebrate, but it also didn't forget. Because something had just happened that didn't belong in right chance. It belonged in skill. After service ended, the kitchen slowly cooled. The chaos faded into exhaustion. Titus washed his hands again, slower this time. He felt different, not powerful, not important, but aware. The head chef approached him quietly. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then finally, "You've been watching too much for someone who claims he doesn't cook." Titus lowered his eyes. "I'm just helping." The chef shook his head slightly. "No," he said. "You're correcting." That word landed deeper than expected. Correcting, not surviving, not obeying, or correcting. The chef stepped closer. "Where did you learn to see food like that?" Titus hesitated, because the truth was simple. He hadn't learned it. He had noticed it. Silence. Hunger. Watching others eat while he waited outside. "I didn't," Titus said quietly. The chef studied him again, then said something that changed everything. "Then you don't belong outside kitchens." A pause. "Then you belong inside them." Titus looked up slightly. For the first time, he didn't feel invisible in a room. He felt seen, and not as a worker, not as a burden, but as something uncertain, something possible. And as he stood there in the fading noise of the kitchen, Titus realized something terrifying. He did not want to leave, not anymore. Titus should have felt free, but freedom, in his world, never arrived cleanly. It always came with strings. The kitchen was becoming something he looked forward to without admitting it. Every day he returned, every task he was given, every correction he made, it all felt like pieces of a life he was not supposed to have. A life that did not demand him to suffer first. But then his phone rang, and everything outside that kitchen came rushing back. It was his mother. Her voice wasn't warm. It never was. "Titus," she said immediately, no greeting, no softness. "Where are you?" "In town," he replied carefully. A pause, then the tone changed, sharper. "Why are you in town again?" "You were told to focus on work at home." Titus tightened his grip on the phone. "I had something to do." Another pause, then came the real reason for the call. "You will send money today." No question. No discussion. No explanation, just demand. Titus blinked slowly. "I haven't been paid." A sharp exhale on the other end. "You are strong. You always find a way. Your brother has school needs. Your father has expenses. Do not start behaving like you are alone in this world." Titus said nothing, because in his home the silence was safer than truth. But this time, something inside him didn't settle as easily, because for the first time, the word alone didn't feel like punishment. It felt like observation. That evening, after leaving the kitchen, Titus sat outside the hotel for a long time. The city moved around him, cars, lights, voices. Life that did not stop for anyone's pain. He stared at the screen of his phone. 3 missed calls, 2 messages, 1 voice note, all from home. He didn't open them immediately. Instead, he closed his eyes, and for a moment, he remembered the kitchen, where mistakes could be corrected, where effort mattered, where he was not spoken to only when needed, but when he finally opened the messages, reality returned. Message 1, Mother, you are forgetting your responsibilities. Message 2, Father, your brother will need fees cleared. Voice note, Mother, do not embarrass this family. You are the firstborn. Act like it. Titus sat still. The word firstborn had never felt like honor, only obligation. He lowered the phone slowly, and that was when Lena's name appeared in another message thread. A message he did not expect. Lena, hey. I heard you're in town often now. Everything okay? Titus stared at the screen longer than he should have because that question was different. It wasn't demand. It wasn't expectation. It was curiosity, human curiosity. He didn't reply immediately, but before he could decide, another message came in from his brother. Brother, don't forget where you came from. City life can confuse people like you. Titus's grip tightened. People like you, that phrase didn't surprise him. It confirmed something he had always known but never said aloud. He was not seen as evolving. He was seen as temporary. A tool that should remain where it was placed. The next morning, when Titus returned home briefly, nothing had changed, but everything felt heavier. His brother greeted him first, with a smile too casual to be real. You're back, he said. City is treating you well, ho? Titus didn't respond. Inside the house, his mother immediately handed him a list, not a greeting. A list. Items. Needs. Money requirements. You will handle these, she said. You have access now. Titus frowned slightly. Access? His mother looked at him as if the answer was obvious. You are in the city. You work there. Do not act confused. That was the moment it became clear they had already decided his life had changed, not to elevate him, but to extract more from him. That night, his father spoke privately, not kindly, not proudly, just practically. You must not forget your duty, he said. If you are around important places now, use it to help your family. Titus looked at him quietly. Something inside him wanted to ask a question, but he didn't. Instead, he asked something smaller. What if I can't? His father's expression darkened slightly. You can. Not encouragement, not belief, command. Later that night, Titus sat alone outside again. The phone buzzed in his hand. Another message from the kitchen. You're expected tomorrow. A different kind of expectation, not burden, not demand, opportunity. He looked at both worlds in his hands. Point one that took from him, point one that gave him something new, and for the first time, Titus understood the true weight of his situation. It was not that he had no path. It was that every path now demanded something from him. His family demanded obedience, the city demanded excellence. And somewhere in between, he was beginning to realize he could not serve both, not forever, not without breaking something. Or someone. And as the night deepened around him, Titus finally asked himself a question he had avoided his entire life, not what he owed, not what he must do, but something far more dangerous. What do I actually want? Titus didn't notice when things started changing. That was the problem with betrayal. It rarely arrives as a single moment. It arrives as a pattern. You are too emotionally invested to question, and by the time you notice it, it's already too late. First, it was small. Alina took longer to reply to messages, shorter responses, delayed greetings, then fewer appearances near the places Titus used to see her. Titus told himself it was normal. People got busy, people changed, people had lives, but a part of him, quiet, observant, unwilling to be fooled, started paying attention. Then came the first real crack. He saw them together not once, but repeatedly. His younger brother and Lena, laughing, talking, walking a little too comfortably beside each other. At first, Titus stood still when he saw them, just watching, like someone trying to interpret a language they didn't want to understand. The first time, Lena noticed him. Her smile faded slightly, not guilt, not shock, just awareness. Titus, she said gently. His brother turned slowly, too slowly, like someone who already knew he had been seen. Hey, the brother said casually. You're back again? Titus didn't respond. He looked at Lena instead, not accusing, not angry, just searching for something. Anything. Lena shifted slightly. I didn't know you were coming today, she said. Titus nodded once. I wasn't coming to see you, he replied quietly. Silence. A strange kind of silence, the kind that doesn't feel empty. It feels heavy. Days passed. The pattern continued. The more Titus observed, the more unavoidable it became. His brother was suddenly more present around Lena, more attentive, more confident. If something had already been decided without Titus being informed and Lena was not resisting it the way Titus expected, not fully and not openly and not at all. That realization hurt more than anything, because resistance would have meant confusion, but comfort meant choice. One afternoon, Titus returned to the village unexpectedly early. He had finished work at the hotel sooner than usual. He walked in quietly. And that was when he saw them, behind the old storehouse, too close. Lena was laughing softly. His brother was speaking lowly, leaning slightly toward her, not touching, not yet, but already crossing boundaries that Titus had once believed were his. Titus stopped walking. The world did not stop with him. Birds still moved, wind still passed, life still continued, but something inside him froze. His brother noticed him first and smiled, not surprised, not guilty, smiled. "Ah," he said. "You're back." Lena turned. Her expression shifted immediately. Not panic, not happiness, just adjustment. "Titus," she said, but there was something different in the way she said his name now, less certain, less close, more careful. Titus looked between them slowly. "I didn't know you two were close," he said. His voice was calm, too calm, the kind of calm that holds too much inside it. His brother shrugged slightly. "We talk," he said. "Nothing serious." "Nothing serious," Titus repeated it silently in his mind, because it felt like a lie dressed as simplicity. Lena stepped forward slightly. "It's not like that," she said quickly, but she didn't explain what it was like, and that was the problem. Silence always protects the truth more than words do. That night, Titus couldn't sleep. Not because of anger, not yet, but because of realization forming too slowly to stop. He replayed everything. The distance, the laughter, the hesitation, the comfort, and the absence of denial. At some point, he sat up. The room felt smaller than usual, not physically, emotionally. His phone buzzed. A message from Lena. "Lena, can we talk tomorrow?" Titus stared at it for a long time. Then another message came from his brother. "Brother, don't misunderstand things. You always think too deeply." Titus exhaled slowly, and for the first time, he didn't feel confused. He felt replaced, not loudly and not dramatically, quietly. As if he had been removed from a place he never realized he was already losing. The next morning, Lena met him alone. She looked nervous, not guilty, not certain. "Titus," she began softly, "I think we should slow things down." Titus nodded slightly. "I see." She hesitated. "That doesn't mean anything is wrong." But her eyes avoided his, and Titus understood something important in that moment. People don't usually explain what is not changing, they explain what already has. He didn't argue. He didn't ask questions. He didn't fight for clarity, because deep down, he already had it, and clarity, once it arrives too late, does not bring peace. It brings weight. As Lena walked away, Titus stood still, watching her leave. Not chasing, not stopping her, just observing the distance grow, and for the first time in his life, he understood what it meant to lose something without ever being told it was yours in the first place. Behind him, the village continued as usual. Ahead of him, the city still waited, and inside him, something quiet and irreversible began to shift. Not yet anger, not yet revenge, something far more dangerous, awakening. The village always looked different at night, not because it changed, but because silence made everything feel more honest. Titus stood outside the family compound long after sunset, his hands buried in his pockets, eyes fixed on nothing in particular. He had returned earlier than usual, but something inside him delayed the act of stepping in. As if the air itself was warning him. Inside, voices were already rising, laughter. A meal being shared, the kind of warmth he used to observe from outside, but tonight, even that warmth felt distant, unwelcoming. He finally stepped in. The moment he entered, the atmosphere shifted, but not toward him. Past him. As if he was simply passing through a space that no longer required acknowledgement. His brother sat at the center of the room, confident, relaxed, speaking freely with their father. Lena was there too. That alone made Titus pause. She didn't look up immediately, not quickly, not naturally. When she finally did, her smile was faint, careful, controlled. "Titus," she said softly. A greeting that no longer carried familiarity. He nodded once, that was all. His father barely glanced at him. "Sit," he said, not unkindly, but not invitingly either. Titus sat at the edge. As always, the edge of the room. The edge of attention, the edge of belonging. The dinner continued, but something was different, not in what was being said. In what was not being said. His brother spoke more tonight, about plans, about opportunities, about things Titus used to be excluded from without explanation. Their father listened attentively, nodded approvingly, even laughed. Titus noticed something small, but important. No one interrupted him. No one corrected him. No one reminded him of his place. It was subtle, but clear. Recognition was being transferred. Quietly. At one point, Lena laughed at something his brother said. A soft laugh, familiar, too familiar. Titus felt it before he understood it, that tightening in the chest, not pain yet, not anger, something sharper, awareness of replacement happening in real time. He looked at her, she didn't notice. Or pretended not to. After dinner, the conversation shifted outside, the men moved out first, Titus followed slowly, unsure why he even bothered. The night air was cold, heavy. His brother stood near the gate speaking casually with Lena, too close, not inappropriate but intentional. Titus stopped walking this time. He didn't move away from the sight. He watched fully, without distraction. His brother noticed him first, and instead of pausing, he smiled, that same smile again, the one that no longer felt harmless. "Ah," he said lightly. "You're still up?" Titus didn't answer. Lena turned, and for a moment, the world held its breath. "Titus," she said again, but this time, there was hesitation in her voice. A careful distance, like stepping around something fragile, something already broken. Titus finally spoke. "Am I interrupting something?" Silence, not immediate denial, not immediate reassurance, just silence. His brother laughed lightly. "It's nothing serious," he said again, the same phrase, the same emptiness. "Nothing serious." Titus nodded slowly. As if absorbing it, as if trying to find where the truth was hiding inside those words. Then his mother called from inside, "Titus." He turned. She stood at the doorway. Her expression was tired, impatient. "Come inside. We need to talk." Something in her tone was different, not urgency, not care, instruction. Titus entered. The room felt colder now, not physically, emotionally. His father was seated already. His brother followed in shortly after. Lena remained outside. His father spoke first, calm, measured, but firm. "You have been in the city too often," he said. Titus said nothing. His father continued, "It is affecting things here." Titus frowned slightly. "What things?" A pause, then his mother spoke. "You are forgetting your role." Silence. Titus blinked slowly. "My role?" His brother leaned slightly back, arms folded. "You're the strong one," he said casually. "That hasn't changed." But something about the way he said it suggested it had. Titus looked at them one by one. His mother, his father, his brother, all aligned in tone, not against him openly but away from him, like he was no longer part of the direction they were moving in. Then his father added something that changed everything. "We are considering future arrangements." Titus froze slightly. "What arrangements?" His mother answered quickly. "For stability." Titus looked at her slowly, carefully, and for the first time, he felt something unfamiliar rise inside him. Not confusion, not sadness, recognition of exclusion being formalized. Outside, Lena's voice could be heard laughing faintly with his brother. That sound reached him clearly through the window, too clearly, and something inside Titus finally clicked into place, not loudly, not violently. Just final. He stood up. Slowly. No one stopped him. No one asked him to sit back down. That was the loudest part. "I see," he said quietly. No one responded, because there was nothing to respond to. Titus walked out of the room, past the doorway, past the voices, past the life that had once required him, and for the first time, no one followed. Outside, the night felt heavier than before. Lena looked at him as he passed for a second, just a second, but didn't move toward him. Didn't speak. Didn't stop him, and Titus understood. This was not a fight, not a misunderstanding, not even betrayal in motion. It was completion, something ending slowly enough for no one to feel guilty about it. He walked away from the house, not running, not breaking down, just walking, because sometimes, the end of everything does not need noise, only acceptance. And as he disappeared into the dark path ahead, something inside Titus finally stopped asking questions, not because it found answers, but because it realized no one was listening anymore. The city did not care that Titus was breaking. It never did. By the time he returned to the hotel kitchen the next day, nothing around him had changed. The world was still moving at the same speed. Orders were still being shouted. Steel was still clashing against steel. Life, in all its precision, continued as if nothing had happened to him at all. But Titus had changed, not loudly, not visibly, just enough that silence no longer felt like comfort. It felt like distance. "Late again," a junior chef muttered as he entered. Titus said nothing. He simply walked to his station and washed his hands, slow, mechanical. Like someone trying to remember how to exist inside a place they were no longer emotionally connected to. The head chef noticed him immediately, but didn't speak. Not yet. Something about Titus had shifted. Experienced chefs always noticed when something unseen changed. The morning service began normally, orders flowed, pans heated, the kitchen moved like a machine built on discipline. Titus worked quietly at the edge again, doing what he was assigned, watching what he always watched, but today, he wasn't observing with curiosity. He was observing with emptiness. Then it happened. A sudden shout from the pass section, VIP table 7 is here early. The entire kitchen tightened instantly. That wasn't unusual, but what followed was a second announcement came seconds later. We have a critical delay on the signature course. Silence cracked into urgency. Orders multiplied. Chefs moved faster. Voices rose. Something was wrong, badly wrong. Titus looked up and saw it. Chaos building in layers. A key station was overwhelmed. A miscommunication had caused a cascade failure. One dish delayed, affecting 3 others, affecting timing across the entire service. Panic was starting to spread, and in kitchens like this, panic destroys everything. Fix it. Someone shouted, "No time." Who handled prep? Titus stepped forward slightly without realizing it, and not because he was asked, but because he saw the collapse forming before it fully happened. His eyes tracked the flow, not the food, the system, and that was when it clicked. He moved without announcement, without permission. He stepped into the disrupted station. A junior chef looked at him. "What are you doing?" Titus didn't answer. He adjusted one pan, then another, changed timing, rebalanced heat distribution, reordered plating sequence, not by instruction, but by instinct. "Stop," someone shouted behind him, but the head chef raised a hand. Silence. Observation. Titus spoke calmly. "Hold the lamb for 7 seconds longer. Move the starter ahead. The sauce is too early." The junior chef hesitated. "You can't just do it," the head chef said. Suddenly the room froze for half a beat, then movement resumed. Titus wasn't cooking. He was correcting everything: the rhythm, the flow, the timing. It wasn't talent in the way people expected talent. It was understanding, deep, unspoken understanding of balance. And then came the real test of the signature dish, for the one already delayed. The one that could not afford error. It arrived at his station incomplete. Pressure peaked instantly. "This has to go out now," someone shouted, but Titus didn't rush. For the first time, he didn't react to pressure. He studied, just for a moment, then he moved. He adjusted seasoning, not by measurement, but by sense. He corrected plating, not by recipe, but by vision. He removed excess, not randomly, but precisely. Every movement was controlled, every correction intentional, not fast. Right. The dish went out late but flawless. A silence followed, not because the kitchen stopped working, but because everyone felt it at the same time. Something had just shifted. Minutes later, the waiter returned. He didn't speak immediately, just stood there. "Then the table wants to know who prepared the correction." No one answered. All eyes slowly turned. Titus, the head chef, stepped forward. For a long moment, he studied him, not surprised, not confused, just certain. "You didn't just fix a mistake," he said quietly. "You understood it before it happened." Titus looked down slightly. "I just saw it," he replied. The chef shook his head once. "No," he said. "People don't just see systems like that." A pause, then the words that changed everything: "You don't belong at the edge of this kitchen." Titus looked up. Slowly the chef stepped closer. "You belong inside it." Silence, heavy, final. Titus didn't respond, because for the first time in a long time, he didn't know what role he was supposed to play, not in his family, not in the city, not in his life. But one thing was becoming undeniable: every place he had ever been told he belonged was already losing him, and every place he had been told he didn't was beginning to recognize him. Titus didn't sleep properly that night, not because he was excited or not because he was afraid, but because his mind no longer knew where to settle. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the kitchen again: movement, pressure, precision, and the moment everything shifted when they looked at him differently, not as a worker, not as a helper, but as something closer to necessary, and that word unsettled him more than anything else. The next morning, he returned to the hotel kitchen earlier than usual. No one had called him. No one had told him to come, but he came anyway, and that alone already felt like a change. When he entered, the atmosphere shifted again, but differently this time: not confusion, not irritation, recognition. A few chefs glanced at him briefly, then returned to their work. No insults, no questioning, just awareness that he was now part of something they couldn't ignore anymore. "Wash up," the head chef said without looking at him. Titus obeyed, but this time, the obedience felt different, not forced, not expected, accepted. For the first time, Titus was assigned a proper station, not at the edge, not observing, inside, close enough to matter. A junior chef stood beside him, visibly unsure. "You're working here now?" the junior asked quietly. Titus didn't answer immediately because even he wasn't sure what now meant. "I guess," he said finally. The service began. And something strange happened. It wasn't easier. It was clearer. Titus wasn't guessing anymore. He was seeing every movement around him. formed patterns in his mind. Every delay had a cause, every imbalance had a source, and every correction had a solution. A chef nearby whispered, "Is fast," another corrected him quietly, "No. He's accurate." That distinction mattered more than speed ever could. Midway through service, the head chef walked past Titus's station. He didn't stop. He didn't comment, but he watched, and Titus noticed that too. Then came the moment that changed everything. Quietly, not loudly like before, not chaotic, subtle. A small but important mistake in preparation from another station threatened to delay a critical order again. No one had noticed yet. But Titus did. He paused, looked, then stepped in without being asked. He corrected it before it became visible. Chaos, reset timing, adjusted sequence, redirected flow. It wasn't dramatic. It was invisible to most, but not to the right eyes. The head chef stopped this time slowly, turned, and watched the entire correction unfold, silently. When service ended hours later, exhaustion filled the kitchen, but something else filled the space too. Respect, not spoken, not announced, but present. Titus was cleaning his station when the head chef finally approached him. This time, there was no crowd. No chaos, just the two of them. "You didn't wait to be told today," the chef said. Titus paused. The mistake was going to delay everything. The chef nodded slowly. "That's not what I asked." Silence. Then Titus answered honestly, "I didn't think I needed permission." That response lingered longer than expected. The chef studied him for a moment, then said something unexpected. "You've been here long enough to be noticed, but not long enough to be understood." Titus didn't respond. He didn't know what that meant yet. The chef continued, "From today, you won't be doing basic stations anymore." Titus looked up slightly. A pause, not excitement, not pride, just wait. "You'll rotate through key sections," the chef said. "And observe senior plating." Titus blinked once. That wasn't promotion in the way people celebrated. It was exposure, responsibility, or expectation. But then came the final sentence, and it landed differently. "You're being trained, quietly." Titus frowned slightly. "Quietly?" The chef nodded. "No announcements. No attention. No distractions." A pause, then, "We don't want the kitchen to notice you rising before you understand what rising costs." Titus stood still, because that was the first time anyone had told him something like that. That progress was not just gain. It was pressure. Later that night, as he left the kitchen, he stood outside the hotel for a long moment. The city lights blurred in the distance. His phone buzzed. A message from home, then another, demand, expectation, responsibility, and for the first time, Titus didn't feel pulled in one direction. He felt split between two lives that were both beginning to demand ownership of him. One through obligation, the other through potential. He looked down at his hands, the same hands that once carried water, the same hands that were now correcting systems he didn't even know he understood, and a quiet realization settled inside him. He was no longer invisible, but visibility came with a cost. One he had not yet learned how to pay. The call came just after Titus finished a long shift. He almost didn't pick it up, not because he didn't recognize the number, but because he already knew what it would feel like before he answered. Home never called to check on him, home called to take from him. Still, he answered. "Where are you?" His mother's voice came immediately. No greeting. No warmth, just urgency. "I just finished work," Titus replied quietly. A pause. Then her tone sharpened. "Work? What work is more important than your family?" Titus closed his eyes briefly, because that question was no longer unfamiliar, only heavier every time his father's voice joined in the background. "Put it on speaker." Titus did. Now it wasn't just one demand. It was a system. "You have not sent anything this week," his mother said. "I haven't been paid yet," Titus replied. A sharp laugh, not amused, dismissive. "You are in the city now," she said. "Do not insult us with excuses." Titus didn't respond, because anything he said was already decided against him. Then came the sentence that shifted everything again. "Your brother is joining a program in town," his father said. "He needs accommodation and support." Silence. Titus blinked slowly. "And I am expected to handle that?" he asked. His mother answered immediately. "Yes. You are already there." As if proximity equaled responsibility. As if existence equaled obligation, Titus lowered his head slightly. For a moment, he almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was predictable. "I can't keep doing this," he said quietly. Silence on the other end. Not shock, not concern, calculation. Then his father spoke, colder, direct. "You can." A pause. "Then you always have." And something inside Titus shifted, not loudly and not explosively, just finally acknowledging what had been building for years. "I am not a machine," Titus said. His voice was low, controlled, but different. His mother responded immediately. "Do not speak like that. Titus frowned. Like what? Ungrateful. That word again, ungrateful, the label that justified everything, but this time, Titus didn't absorb it. He questioned it, silently. For the first time. I work, he said slowly. I send money. I do everything I'm told. And still I am ungrateful. His father cut in. You are the firstborn. That phrase again, not identity, burden. Titus stood still. Something was building in his chest now, not anger yet, not fully, but pressure, years of pressure with nowhere left to go. Before he could respond further, another voice entered the call. His brother, calm, confident, almost smiling through the phone. Relax, Titus, he said lightly. We're just asking for help. Don't take it personally. Titus went quiet because that voice, that tone, it carried something new now. Comfort, control, ownership. Then came the final twist. You should be happy, his brother added. We are building the family image. You are part of that. Titus closed his eyes, slowly, because he finally understood something he had refused to see. He was not being asked for help. He was being assigned purpose. And then, without warning, the call shifted again. A sound in the background. Laughter, familiar laughter. Lena's laughter. Titus froze slightly. His eyes opened. His grip tightened. He heard his brother say something faintly. Say hi. Then Lena's voice came through the speaker, soft, careful, but real high. Titus, silenced, not external, internal collapse. Titus didn't answer immediately because something inside him refused to accept the timeline of what he was hearing. Not betrayal and not confusion, confirmation. He spoke slowly. You're there. A pause, then Lena responded, I came to visit. Nothing more. No explanation. No warning. No acknowledgement of what that meant. Titus nodded slowly to himself. As if aligning reality. I see, he said quietly. Then his mother interrupted again. Send the money by tomorrow. Click. The call ended. Silence returned, but it was different now. He was still holding the phone, but nothing on the other side remained connected. That night, Titus walked back through the city alone. The kitchen lights behind him were still warm, still alive, still calling him forward, but his steps were slower now. He wasn't just tired. He was aware. He replayed everything: the demands, the laughter, the voice, the replacement. Not sudden, not dramatic, organized, and for the first time in his life, Titus did not ask what he owed. He asked what was being taken. He stopped walking, looked up at the city skyline, and something inside him finally cracked, not into collapse, but into clarity. I was never part of that family, he said quietly to himself. A pause, then I was just useful to it. And for the first time, the thought of stepping away didn't feel like fear. It felt like possibility. The city felt different after that night, not because it had changed, but because Titus had. Everything still moved the same, cars rushing past, neon lights flickering, voices blending into noise, but for the first time, he wasn't inside it emotionally. He was observing it from a distance, even while standing in the middle of it. He didn't go home, not that night, not the next morning either. Instead, he returned to the only place that still made sense: the kitchen. Inside, life continued as usual. Orders shouted at, knives clashing, steam rising, but something subtle had shifted. People noticed him now, not loudly and not openly, but enough to change how they moved around him. He wasn't at the edge anymore, but he also wasn't fully one of them yet. He was in between, and that space was dangerous. The head chef watched him from a distance, more than usual, not interfering, just observing. As if waiting for something or someone. Titus worked through the shift quietly, efficient, precise, detached, but inside him, nothing was quiet because for the first time, he was no longer reacting to life. He was evaluating it. After service ended, Titus stayed behind. Most of the staff had already left. The kitchen was emptying into silence. He stood at his station for a long time, just looking at it like he was memorizing something that might not belong to him for long. Still here, a voice asked behind him, the head chef. Titus turned slightly. Yes, he replied. A pause, then the chef walked closer. You've been different, he said. Titus didn't respond, because he knew it was true. The chef leaned against a counter, not as authority. As presence. What happened? He asked. Titus hesitated. For once, he didn't default to silence. My family called, he said. The chef nodded slowly, and Titus looked down at his hands. They reminded me what I am to them. Silence. The chef didn't interrupt. Titus continued. I'm not a person there, he said quietly. I'm a resource. That word landed heavier than expected. Resource, not son, not brother, not loved one. Resource. The chef exhaled slowly. That's not unusual, he said. Titus looked up slightly. It should be. The chef didn't argue. Instead, he studied him carefully. You're thinking of leaving them, he said. Not a question. A recognition. Titus didn't answer immediately because even saying it out loud made it real, but then he nodded, slowly. Yes. Silence again, but this time, it wasn't uncomfortable. It was finalizing. The chef straightened slightly. Where would you go? He asked. Titus paused, and for the first time, the answer wasn't unclear. The only place I've ever felt seen, he said. The kitchen. The chef watched him for a long moment, then said something unexpected. You understand what that means, right? Titus frowned slightly. The chef continued. If you leave that life behind, you don't get to go back the same way. Not even in your mind. A pause, then you'll lose them twice. Once in reality. Once in memory. Titus swallowed. That hit deeper than he expected, because it wasn't just warning. It was truth, but then he remembered the call, the demands, the laughter, the replacement, and something inside him steadied. I've already lost them, Titus said quietly. The chef nodded slowly. As if he had been waiting for that answer. Then he stepped back. Then don't stay here out of confusion, he said. Stay here out of decision. Titus looked at him. Decision, not escape, not survival, choice. That night, Titus walked back to his small rented room in the city. It was empty, quiet, still, and for the first time, the silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like space. He sat on the edge of the bed, looked at his phone. Dozens of missed calls, messages, demands, names that once defined him, now just notifications. He opened one message. From his mother. Don't forget who you are. Titus stared at it. Long still, then softly said, that's the problem. He set the phone down and stood up. For the first time in his life, he packed, not because he was told to, but because he decided to, slowly, quietly, without announcement, without permission. And as he folded the last item into his small bag, something inside him settled. Not peace, not happiness, but alignment. He wasn't running away. He wasn't rebelling. He was stepping out of a role he never agreed to play. And somewhere deep inside him, Titus finally understood what leaving really meant. Not losing home, but choosing self. Titus didn't wake up the next morning expecting clarity. He woke up expecting regret. That was what his life had trained him to feel whenever he stepped outside obedience. But for the first time, regret didn't come, only silence and space. The small rented room felt unfamiliar in a different way now, not because it was new, but because it was his. No voices from home. No demands in the middle of the night. No expectations waiting at the door. Just him, and the echo of his own thoughts. He sat for a long time on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. For years, his life had been built around reacting to commands. To needs. To survival. But now, there was nothing pulling him, and that emptiness was more terrifying than exhaustion ever was, because for the first time, he had to choose. He stood up, took a deep breath, and walked out. The city outside was already awake, fast, loud, unbothered. But Titus was no longer overwhelmed by it. He was watching it differently now, not as someone beneath it, but someone inside it, trying to find his place. He walked for hours, not aimlessly, but searching for something small, something possible, something that did not belong to anyone else. First, that's when he found it. A small roadside stall space, not glamorous, not polished, just a tiny corner between two busy paths where people passed constantly. It wasn't advertised. It wasn't perfect, but it was available, and it was cheap enough. The owner looked him up and down. You want this? The man asked. Titus nodded. For what? Titus paused, not because he didn't know, but because saying it out loud made it real. Food, he said finally. The man laughed lightly. Everyone wants food, he replied. Very few know how to survive selling it. Titus didn't argue. He simply said, "Well, try." That was enough. The space was barely enough for a table and a small cooking setup, but Titus didn't complain. He cleaned it, fixed it, rearranged it like he had done in kitchens before, but this time, no one was telling him how. He borrowed what he could. A small stove. A few utensils, basic ingredients, nothing special, nothing impressive, just enough to begin. The first day, he didn't sell anything. People passed, looked, moved on. No recognition. No curiosity. No second glance. Titus stood behind his small setup and watched, not disappointed, not surprised, just observing reality without emotion interfering. This was normal, this was expected, this was how everything in his life had always started, invisible. The second day was the same, and the third, but on the fourth day, something changed. Not big, not dramatic, small. A man stopped, looked at the food, hesitated, then sat down. Titus served him without speaking too much, just precision, just quiet effort. The man ate slowly, then paused, looked at Titus and said, "This is better than I expected." That sentence hit differently, not praise, recognition. He finished his meal. Paid. Left. No ceremony. No attention, but something had shifted, because someone had stopped and returned. Awareness had begun. The next day, 2 people came, then 3. Then a few more, not because of marketing, not because of strategy, but because word moves faster than systems when something feels real. Titus didn't celebrate. He didn't relax. He simply worked, quietly, consistently, carefully, like someone rebuilding something he didn't fully understand yet. One afternoon, while preparing food, he paused briefly, not because of exhaustion but because of memory. The hotel kitchen, the head chef's words, "You belong inside kitchens." He had thought that meant luxury, structure, recognition, but now he understood something deeper. A kitchen wasn't a place. It was a language, and he was finally speaking it for himself. That evening, as he counted his small earnings, he stared at the coins for a long time, not because it was much. It wasn't, but because it was his, earned directly, not extracted, not demanded, not stolen through obligation. He exhaled slowly, and for the first time in years, it didn't feel like survival. It felt like beginning. But as the city lights flickered on around him, Titus didn't notice the man across the street watching him for a second longer than necessary. Or the phone that was slowly lighting up somewhere far away, with a familiar name. A family that thought he had only paused, not left, and that misunderstanding was about to change everything again. It started with a phone, not his and not planned and not even noticed at first. A young woman sat at Titus's small roadside stall one afternoon, tired from work, scrolling through her phone between bites. She had come because someone had told her, "There's a place nearby that's different." She didn't expect much. The food was cheap, the setup was simple, the chef quiet, but when she took the first bite, she paused, not dramatically and not for attention, just still. Then she looked up, as if trying to understand why something so ordinary felt so precise. Without thinking too much, she lifted her phone and started recording just a short clip. The stall, the food being prepared, Titus moving quietly, focused, almost detached from everything except the task in front of him. No music, no filters, no intention, just reality. She posted it, caption simple: "Found a small street chef who cooks like he's in a fine dining kitchen, but it's just a roadside stall." That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. At first, nothing happened, then a few likes. A few comments, then more, then shares, then reposts. By night, the video had crossed circles it was never meant to reach. Food pages picked it up, local bloggers shared it, then bigger pages, then curiosity. People weren't just watching the food, they were watching him, the calm, the precision, the silence in his movements that didn't match the environment around him. It didn't look like struggle. It looked like control. The next morning, Titus arrived at his stall like normal, but the normal he knew was gone. A small crowd was already waiting, not large, but different, not familiar faces anymore, new ones, phones out, whispers forming, curiosity building. Titus paused for a moment, just a second, then walked in and started working. He didn't know yet what had changed. So he didn't change anything. He cooked. He plated. He served the same way he always had, a careful, quiet, intentional, but now, every movement was being watched, recorded and analyzed, shared. One customer whispered, "That's him." Another replied, "He looks the same as in the video." But what surprised them wasn't his appearance. It was his focus. He didn't perform. He didn't smile for attention. He didn't acknowledge the cameras. He simply cooked. As if the world watching him didn't matter. By midday, the line had grown longer than usual, not because of advertising but because of curiosity turning into obsession. Then came the second wave. Someone recognized the technique. A food influencer. A small one, but loud online. He posted, "This guy isn't just cooking street food. He's cooking like a trained chef from elite kitchens." That was the spark. By evening, the stall was no longer just a stall. It was a location. A destination. A story. Titus noticed something strange that night. People weren't just eating, they were watching him while they ate. As if trying to decode him, but he didn't react, not because he didn't notice, but because reacting had never changed his life before, only consistency had. So he continued. Later that night, after closing, he sat quietly behind the stall counting his small earnings, but his phone buzzed once, then again. He looked at it and paused. Notifications, messages, unknown numbers, screenshots, tags, mentions, his name, being repeated somewhere he had never entered before. He opened one notification. A repost of the original video, now with thousands of shares, caption changed, "Who is this guy and why does his food feel like fine dining on the street?" Titus stared at the screen for a long moment, not shocked, not excited, just aware something had moved, and it was no longer just around him. It was beyond him. That night, as he locked up his small stall, a man stood across the street watching, not a customer, not a passerby, someone observing quietly, studying and measuring and deciding. And for the first time since starting his small kitchen, Titus felt something unfamiliar beneath the surface, not fear and not pride, but pressure, the kind that grows when the world finally notices you, without asking if you're ready. He turned off the lights and walked away into the city night, unaware that the life he had just begun to build was no longer small enough to stay hidden. The day after the video spread, Titus noticed something strange. The air around his stall felt different, not louder, not brighter, just heavier, like the world had quietly shifted its attention in his direction without asking permission. He arrived early, as always, cleaned the small cooking space, prepared ingredients, arranged everything with the same calm precision he had learned to rely on, but today, he didn't feel alone. Even before customers arrived, the first group came sooner than expected, then another, then a line that formed faster than the day before. Phones were already out. Some people were smiling, others were simply watching him like they were trying to confirm something they had seen online was real. Titus didn't react. He never did. He just cooked. But midway through the morning, a black car stopped across the street. No one noticed at first. Cars were normal in the city, but this one didn't belong to the usual rhythm of the road. It stayed parked, engine off, waiting. Titus didn't look up, but someone inside the car was watching him closely, too closely. After an hour, a man stepped out. Well-dressed, calm posture, and not a customer, not a passerby, someone used to being listened to before he spoke. He walked toward the stall slowly and not rushed, not curious, certain. Titus noticed him only when he stopped in front of the counter for a moment. Neither spoke. The man looked at the food, then at Titus, then back at the food again. As if confirming something he already believed. "You're the one from the video," the man said. Titus nodded once. "I think so." The man studied him a bit longer, then smiled faintly, not warmly, not coldly, professionally. "I own a restaurant," he said. Titus continued working as he listened. "A habit, not disrespect, just survival," the man continued. "A proper one. Not a street setup." A pause, then, "We've been looking for someone who understands food without needing noise around it." Titus finally looked up slightly, not fully, just enough to acknowledge the weight of the words. The man placed a small card on the counter. "Black, simple, clean, noxs, just an address and a name, Elysian table. I want you to come," the man said. Not a request, not a suggestion. An opening. Titus didn't touch the card immediately. He simply looked at it, then at the man, then back at the card. "What for?" Titus asked quietly. The man didn't hesitate. "To cook where your skills are not limited by environment." A pause, then, "And to see if you belong in a kitchen that doesn't sit on the street." That word again, belong. Titus felt it differently now, because he had heard it before, from the hotel kitchen, from the head chef, from the world that was slowly pulling him upward without his permission. He finally picked up the card, slowly, carefully, like it might disappear if handled wrong. Around them, customers continued eating, unaware that something important was happening at the counter. Unaware that decisions that change lives rarely announce themselves loudly. Titus looked at the card for a long moment, then asked, "What happens if I go?" The man didn't smile this time. He answered honestly, "Then your life stops being small." A pause, "and starts being watched." Silenced, not empty, heavier. Titus glanced briefly at his stall, his small setup, his borrowed stove, the life he had just started building with his own hands, then back at the card for the first time. The choice didn't feel simple, not because he was afraid of leaving, but because he had just begun existing in a space where people finally noticed him, and leaving meant stepping into something even larger, something uncertain, something irreversible. The man turned slightly, preparing to leave, then added one last line, "You don't have to decide today. But people like you don't stay hidden for long." He walked away. The black car left slowly, quietly, like it had only come to deliver a message, not an answer. Titus stood still for a moment, holding the card, watching the street, listening to the noise around him that suddenly felt further away than before. That night, after closing, he sat alone behind his stall. The city was loud, but his mind wasn't. It was elsewhere. At a crossroads he hadn't agreed to reach so soon. His phone buzzed. A message, then another, then a notification from a news page. Mystery street chef offered opportunity at elite restaurant after viral fame. Titus stared at the screen. Long still, then looked at the card again, and for the first time since he started cooking for himself, he understood something important. This wasn't just an invitation. It was a test, not of skill, but of direction. He exhaled slowly and placed the card on the table. Not accepted, not rejected, just waiting. Titus knew something had changed even before he saw them. It wasn't the crowd. It wasn't the city noise. It was the silence in his chest, the kind that arrives when you realize your past is no longer behind you, but approaching you. That morning, the line at his stall was longer than usual, but different again, less chaotic, more intentional. People weren't just coming to eat. They were coming to see him. To confirm he was real. To confirm the story online wasn't exaggerated. Titus worked quietly as always, same rhythm, same precision, same silence, but now, every movement carried weight he didn't ask for. Then he noticed them. At first, just shapes in the crowd, a hesitation, distance, uncertainty, people standing too still for customers, too nervous for strangers. He looked up briefly while plating a dish and froze for half a second. His mother, standing near the edge of the crowd, clothes slightly different from what he remembered. But the same eyes, the same posture of quiet authority that used to command him without effort. Behind her, his father, and then his brother, and behind them, Lena. Titus didn't stop cooking, but something inside him shifted, not outwardly, not visibly, just internally, like a door quietly closing. His mother stepped forward first, careful, measured, almost rehearsed. Titus, she called softly. A voice that had never needed softness before. He didn't respond immediately. He finished plating the dish, handed it to a customer, then turned slowly. For a moment, no one spoke, not because there was nothing to say, but because everyone was measuring the distance between who he was then and who he had become now. His father cleared his throat. "We heard about you," he said. Titus nodded once. No surprise. No reaction, just acknowledgement. His brother smiled. A different kind of smile this time, careful, smaller, less certain. "You've been busy," he said. Titus looked at him and for the first time didn't immediately look away. "Yes," he replied simply. Lena stood slightly behind them, not hiding, but not stepping forward either. Her eyes met Titus's briefly and held longer than expected, but she said nothing. His mother finally spoke again. "We didn't know you had become this." That pause mattered. Not successful, not different, just this, something undefined, something they had not prepared for. Titus wiped his hands slowly, looked at them properly now, all of them. Together. Here. In front of his life, not inside it, not part of it, just observing it. "You came because of the food," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. Silenced. His brother shifted slightly. His father didn't deny it. His mother exhaled slowly. "It's not like that," she said carefully, but she didn't explain what it was like. Titus nodded once. As if confirming something to himself. Then he said something that made the air tighten immediately. "You didn't come when I was nothing." A pause. No interruption, just truth sitting between them. His mother stepped forward slightly. "We didn't know you were struggling like this," Titus interrupted softly. "I wasn't struggling." Silence again. He continued. "I was just invisible." That word landed differently, not dramatic, not loud, but final in a way that couldn't be softened. His father frowned slightly. "That's not fair," he said. Titus looked at him. Long, calm, almost detached. "What part?" he asked. No answer came immediately because the question wasn't about fairness. It was about recognition. Lena finally stepped forward slightly. "Titus," she said quietly. But stopped there. As if unsure what version of him she was allowed to speak to. Titus looked at her and for the first time didn't soften, not cruelly and not emotionally, just, "Clearly you're here too," he said. A pause, a not accusation, observation. Lena lowered her eyes slightly and didn't respond. The crowd around them had gone quieter now, people watching phones discreetly out, sensing something unfolding that didn't belong to them, but would likely become part of their stories anyway. His mother tried again. "We just want to understand you now." Titus nodded slowly. As if considering the statement carefully. Then he replied. "Oh no." A pause. "I don't think you do." Silence. His brother shifted uncomfortably. His father looked away briefly. Lena said nothing. Titus turned slightly back toward his stall. As if preparing to return to what he was doing, but paused without looking at them again. He said, "I built something without you. Don't come here now and act like you helped shape it." Then he turned back to his work, slow, calm, uninterrupted. Behind him, no one spoke for a while because there was nothing immediate left to defend, only distance to accept. And as Titus continued cooking, he realized something quietly. This wasn't a reunion. It was an inspection of a life they no longer had access to. But what they didn't realize yet was that Titus was also being inspected. By the world. By opportunity. By something much larger than family approval. And this time, he was not the one waiting to be chosen.